The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, you may like and share them on Facebook. Howard Insurance in Port St. Lucie now presents the African American Scene, a program that comes your way live every Wednesday evening in the 6 o'clock hour, tonight followed by IRSC basketball with Greg Wyatt. But right now, it's a happening thing. Right now, it is time for the African American Scene. Here's your host, Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. It's always good to be with you here on a Wednesday night. I know you're eager to get back to politics, and this is my last Black History Month show for this year. So we're going to stick with that theme. I do want to address something that Bill called me at the end of my show last week. And I want to address a couple of topics that he raised. As you know, I was talking about slavery and the lasting damage that some of that has had on the psyche of African-American folks. And the statement he made to me was, why am I being divisive? Well, if you recall at the outset of my show, my mission was not to make you feel guilty. It was to provide you with information that you may have wanted to ask some of your African-American friends and did not have the courage to ask, or to provide you with information so that when you're talking to some of your African-American friends, you have a better understanding of how they feel about certain topics, such as when I told you, when they talk about the founding fathers, we don't, I'm not going to say all black people, because there are some black people that feel differently, but I'm going to say the vast majority of black folks do not find the same feeling for the founding fathers that all others do, because of the association of those founding fathers with our degradation. Now, and here's one of the things that I pointed out was that it is now pretty much widely accepted that Thomas Jefferson had a torrid affair with Sally Hemings starting at age 14. And Bill said to me, well, Martin Luther King had an affair. And he said, so all men make mistakes. Well, that's true. And Martin Luther King did have an affair. But what Thomas Jefferson did today, he'd be locked up and they'd throw the key away, having sex with a 14-year-old. That's a false equivalency completely. And here's one that I have often wondered, and maybe one of you can call up and give me an answer. That number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. When black people talk about their past, it's seen as divisive. When Jewish people talk about the Holocaust, I never hear the words divisive. Never. I never hear the words divisive associated with Jewish people when they talk about their past. But when black people talk about their past, then it is considered divisive. And I'm really not sure that I understand.
Is that more of like a politeness instead of saying I don't want to hear
it? Maybe.
Maybe in an effort to be polite and correct.
Yeah, maybe.
You never know.
Maybe that's what it is, that some folks, well, I think it pricks the conscience of some people. And I've already told you, I don't hold you responsible for what happened 200 years, 400 years ago, but by the same token, you're charged with awareness. You should be aware, because unfortunately, as Cliff and I talked about earlier, it is not adequately covered in the history books. And to me, that's criminal. We've been here since 1619. We have been here longer than almost everybody who is listening to this show tonight. My forefathers have been here since the inception of this country and have fought in every single war, starting with the American Revolution. And to not know anything about who we are is disgraceful. And it shouldn't have to be a Black History Month, but there is, because there is nothing of any substance in the history books about us when we have made such an important contribution to the construction and the building of this country. And that is sinful all by itself. Well, we got a caller on line 1. Winnie, how are you?
How you doing, Rudy Howard?
Good.
Yeah, about Sally here is in Thomas Jefferson. I saw that movie. They been talking that many years ago. It's a movie. They made a movie about them. She was 14 years old, and he was middle age.
Yep.
And he fathered some children by her.
Yes.
And people now today, they call it what is child molestation and
Oh yeah, you today you'd go to jail for that.
That's right.
You go directly to jail.
That's right. And he was a slave owner.
Yep.
And they said George Washington, he was a slave owner too. He got with them pregnant some of them black slave ladies. George Washington, first president.
Yes, he did. He had a special.
He pregnant some of them slave ladies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They say he hid, but Thomas Jeff about selling him is I don't know about. He hid here, but he did it. All of them did it.
Yeah.
Thomas Jeff, he was open with him about that selling him. He was open. He didn't care. They said the newspaper put it out there. He did, got her pregnant at 14 years old. And I thought Thomas Jeff some more yeah, but he didn't hide his.
He tried to hide it. But they caught wind of it, and actually when they first started talking about it in the papers, he got furious about that. But it was so out and open. Yeah, he just couldn't hide it, But I think they had 5 or 6 kids.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Good gossip was really hard to find in those days.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You're right about that. He had freed her and her children. He freed them from slavery.
Yeah.
That movie and stuff like that. George Washington all did it. They got them pregnant, them slave ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And children by them and stuff like that. Yeah, that's part of that's part of Black history, though. It is.
It is.
That's what had happened.
Yeah.
Really, my favorite lady is Harriet Tubman. Favorite Douglas Cool too. They're my favorite people. Really, Harriet Tubman. My favorite lady for all time.
All right, very good.
Okay, we'll talk. Okay, I'm glad somebody else called.
Okay, thank you, Winnie. She's a faithful listener. Winnie listens
always there.
Yeah, she listens every week, and I'm glad she put that in perspective. It is it is what it is, and But like I said, if somebody can tell me why, when Black people talk about slavery, it's divisive, and when Jewish people talk about the Holocaust, that's not divisive. I don't get that. So maybe you can educate me. I'm always trying to educate you. Maybe you can educate me why one is divisive and the other is not. So if you can, that number is 340-1590. Now, I'm going to finish up. I don't remember exactly where I left off, but I'm going to finish up with the part about maintaining the family unit. one of the things that helps people who become legal immigrants into this country is the family unit. And most people that come here, whether you came from Ireland or Italy or wherever you came from, you lean heavily on your family to help you in the transition. And unfortunately for us, in slavery, we weren't always able to lean on the family unit because the family unit could be broken up at any moment, and there was nothing you could do about it. And we got Jay on line one. How you doing, my friend? I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, a long time. How you doing, Rudy? You
Good.
And your guest. I just want to remind before I get to the Jewish thing, comparing, when people talk about, the struggle. It seems like they don't challenge the Jewish religion or the Jewish people, but they always challenge us and want to know. Well, civil rights is over. We don't have to worry about. You had a black president. Why are you crying and complaining? That's what. But I just want to make one announcement. Okay. Ryan Mass, our congressman, is having a town hall at the Finn Center Friday at 1:00. I just want people to know that. So if you have anything you want to ask him about Trump, because he represents you. That's what you're paying his salary. So it's good to go and ask him questions about the Affordable Care Act. Does he care if people die? Does he really care? Or does he have an answer for the Affordable Care Act that's going to make things better? Is that poison pill that Rubio put in the bill to not pay the hospitals that we had promised to pay the doctors and the hospitals that extra money for the seniors because they have more illness than young people? And that poison pill was put into a bill. Nobody talks about it. I don't hear Wolf Blitzer. Nobody talking about that. But that's why the budget is, the money is going up in these insurance companies because we're not doing our part, the federal government, because they stopped paying the hospitals the money that they were guaranteed to pay them to cover the Affordable Care Act was part of the bill. I think you should know about it because you're in insurance. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Never talked about, Rudy, never. I don't hear none of the commentators bringing that up and talking to, any of the leaders in the Senate or the House about that when they have those press conferences. They talk about everything else but the things that's going to affect about 30 million people.
Now, see, but here's the thing, Jay.
Yeah.
And we are part of the problem here. What has happened now is people, the lies and the deceptions have now been stripped away. Okay? And the death panels and, the government is going to control your doctor, all that garbage they said in the beginning. Now that all of that's been stripped away, people are going, well, wait a minute. I don't think I want you to take my health insurance away. But see, part of that is the Democrats' fault because when the Republicans got on top of that message and they started pounding all that misinformation and deceptive statements about what the act was, they didn't fight back.
I agree with you 1,000%. Right.
So they allowed a lot of that stuff to become false facts. Okay? So now that it's all peeled away and the people are looking the reality in the face of possibly losing their health insurance, I saw something last night at Governor Grassley's meeting. And there was a supporter in the back, and he said, I'm on the ACA right now. And I don't mean to cause any trouble, but you told me there were going to be death panels. Did you see that?
Yep, I saw it. Yeah, they got on him, and he was. I think he was a little surprised that he was getting all that flack.
Yeah, so he was one of the ones out there telling people there was going to be death panels, and the guy's telling them, "Well, no, I don't want you to take that away. Fix it, but don't take it away." But anyway, you got me off track here on my last day.
No, it's okay. But when it comes to Jewish folks, if you notice, you very seldom hearing songs about calling them out of the name like they have the N-word with us. Every other lyric is the N-word. You'll never hear that with Jewish folks.
No.
Because the Anti-Defamation League will sue everybody in sight if you start, saying anything or calling them out of their name, or making fun of their religion or their people, or their culture. And another thing is that if you remember, Michael Jackson made a record. He made an album, and he brought up a word that was that was very distasteful for the Jewish folks. But what he was doing, he was trying to show that we all have to stick together. We have to be we have to make sure that America's for everybody.
Yeah, I vaguely
use the
remember
word.
That. Yeah.
Start with a K, and they made him. They said take that record off the market. Even the master, he had to change the master on that album to make sure that he didn't have that word in there because it was very derogatory to Jewish folks. And that's the power they have. They don't tolerate nonsense, and they will sue, and they will make sure that they rally and make sure that you do not disrespect what they're about as a people, and not about the past. Now, just like Trump thinks he was sick because he's trying to appeal to these to the white nationalists, these white racists, I call them. They want to call them alt-right. I call them neo-Nazis. And he's appealing. He wants to make sure that they're happy and they don't, get despondent and all that. So he don't want to talk about anti-Semitism and what they're doing and destroying, the synagogues and turning over gravestones and Jewish cemeteries and all of the stuff that they're doing now. So all of a sudden he gets to the museum, African American Museum, and so he has to say something. But he didn't even read that right. He was reading from a script, but he didn't even do that with respect.
Yeah.
And so this goes to show you that, and what's going to happen is people are going to start figuring out, and some of these other folks are going to wake up and say and realize that this is not a white country anymore. It's not going to be controlled by the white folks. Because the majority of the people are going to be people of color within another 10 years. So they have to just face up to it. And you can deport some of those folks, but you're going to have to change that also because elections will matter and elections will get things back in order because I think people are going to wake up and realize they got to get out and vote.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
Take care.
All righty.
Wow.
Yeah. We got a little sidetracked there, but.
Do you think we need an anti-black defamation league?
Well, we have the NAACP. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt the Anti-Defamation League is very, very aggressive. Very aggressive. But the advantage that they have over the NAACP is that it appears to me that when the Anti-Defamation League takes action, there's no backlash from the general public in the actions that they take, as opposed to when black folks take an aggressive action, there seems to be almost an immediate backlash to taking on a particular issue. I think that is a huge difference between the things that the Jewish community does in support of their people and what happens when black people try to take action against things that they may find reprehensible. And we have Nick on line one. Yes, sir.
Oh, I got to push this button. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm thinking, why is the black community not so up in arms about all of the lyrics in all of this music that the N-word is every other word, not to mention all of the filthy and sexually derogatory messages, and the kids, they live it. The songs are about drugs and booty, and you want to find out, where is the Black Caucus? Where are the black people saying, get rid of this? This is unacceptable. We do not want our youth listening to lyrics that are divisive, and we work too hard for too long to get the N-word erased from this country, and we are putting it back in. I yelled at two kids, probably 9 and 10, the other day in front of my driveway because one was teaching the other one how to say the N-word, and I lost it. I said, what are you doing? Don't ever do that. And one kid looked at me like, wow, maybe I shouldn't listen to this kid. And the other kid was like, oh, well, what's the big deal?
Okay. Well, let me address that for you. Okay. I don't like it. Okay. And one of the people that most conservatives hate, Al Sharpton.
With all respect, I'm going to drop off the line so I can listen. Okay, sir?
Okay, all right. I don't like it. And one of the people that conservatives hate, Al Sharpton doesn't like it. He spoke on it many times. Now, let me explain to you where and how it evolved. And it's not an excuse, it's just a reality. If you can think back to, for those of you that are my age in your mid-60s, early 60s, to folk songs. Folk songs told stories about things that were happening in their community and in their neighborhood, and sometimes were extremely critical about what was taking place, especially with respects to Vietnam. Well, if you listen to some of the songs, what those songs are doing is telling you about conditions that exist in their neighborhoods. Now, like I said, I don't like it. I'm not going to tell you I do because I don't like it. But the point of it is that they're telling a story, and they're telling that story to the people that the kids that are listening. Now, on the other side of that, too, I will tell you, if you have not heard it, there are plenty of black Christian rap songs out there that are devoid of the N-word, for sure. I hope, if it was up to me, that word would be eliminated from any further songs that would be created. But that is not completely up to me, for sure. But anyway, so now let me get back to the winding this thing up about slavery. One of the challenges I told you is that, you know, when legal immigrants come here, they lean heavily on their families. And that's not always been a situation that was available for African Americans in slavery, because a slave owner might give some of the slaves to his son or his daughter as a wedding present. So you could just separate a family, and there's nothing you could do, because at that time they were considered property. They were not considered human beings. So now, here's the thing that I want you to understand, that nobody else who's ever come here has had to experience, and it is still causing us great angst to this day. They completely and deliberately created a dissension between black folks with the field Negroes and the house Negroes, okay? Now, how did they do that? Well, just think about it for a second. If you're out in the field all day and you're working your brains out, okay, and somebody else is in the house and they don't have to go out and be in the hot, sweaty sun, there tends to be a natural jealousy that takes place. Now let me make it even a little more dramatic. Oftentimes, the color of your skin determined whether or not you were a house Negro or a field Negro. So if you were of dark skin, there's no question you were going to be in the field. And oftentimes, some of the masters' mulatto children were house Negroes. So think about that. And the people that were in the house would do anything to stay there. So it would be not beyond the pale of a house Negro to rat out a field Negro. Now, think about that happening over a period of over 300 years. That's 10 generations where you have created this animus between our own folks. I can tell you, and there's probably some black folks that may be listening are mad at me for even discussing this, but I think you need to know the reality, because that is psychological trauma that was done to black folks that still exist to this day. There's nobody else that's come here where they have created animus, were able to create animus between their own kind like they have with black folks. So that is something for you to understand. And I would say in my lifetime, I have seen that get better. But it is probably 1.5 to 2 generations away from going away completely. But I would say it's probably 1.5 to 2 generations away from going away completely. Okay, so there we have it. And it's pretty much the summary of what the slave situation was and how that has had a profound effect. Now, I tell you all of that, and I keep emphasizing the fact of the length of time because it is extremely important for you to understand. If you understand that this happened over a period of, counting Jim Crow, like 400 years, how long do you think that it would take to have that ingrained in your system? It gets ingrained in your system to such an extent that it becomes part of who you are. And I hope you all will understand that and have some sensitivity for it. And it's not just, okay, here they go again. There's issues that are still out there that relate to the fact of when we were slaves that are still having a psychological impact on us as people. Now, before I go to I have some timeline stuff that's pretty interesting. But before I go to that, I'm going to share a little piece of information I got on Black History Month. It's called, it's a little poll. And I'm going to share this with you because there's some information in here that I think you'll find very interesting. In the area of education, from 2005 to 2015, the rate of high school graduation among black people went from 81.4% to 87.7%. Wow, that's like a 6-point jump. And in the same time, there was an increase in Latinos from 58.5 to 66, and Asians are at 83%, and American Indians are at 83%, and white folks are at 93%. So, but note that significant increase in high school getting your high school diploma. Now, let me show you the next one that I find interesting, and I shared these with Cliff earlier. From 2005 to 2015, the increase of bachelor's degrees for black folks went from 17.6 to 22.9. Think about that, boy. That's a big jump. 17.6 to 22.9. And Latinos, it went from 12.5 to 15.5. And Asians are off the chart. There is at 49.3 to 52.9. So over 50% of Asians now have college degrees. And Indians from 14 to 19, and for whites from 30 to 36. Now, why is that important? I'm going to tell you why. And if some of you are going to want to ring the phone and tell me that I'm full of it. What you saw in that increase of education, high school, and bachelor's degrees is pretty much a direct result of President Obama. Why? Explain to you why. First of all, the high schoolers, for the most part, that's the only president they ever knew. And what you had in President Obama was a transition from hope to hope and real possibilities. So now if I'm a young man and I look and I can see the President of the United States looks like me, that becomes real. That's not like, when we were growing up and you could be anything you want to be. Now all of a sudden that becomes very real. So it's easy now to make the transition and say, I have to strive for achievement because I can be something special. Now, I know some of you are not going to get this, and there's others of you I know that are listening that get it completely. But that's just...
If you want something out of life, you have to be able to visualize it.
Yes.
You'll never reach it without something to see, something to look at.
Yeah. So what they saw. Now, but just think about this for a second. The high school graduates, most of them have never known another president than President Obama. Okay?
That's true, yes.
For most of their lives.
And they're almost done with school. They'll be voters soon.
Yes.
Okay.
So for 8 years, let's just say that from the time that they were 10 until they graduated from high school, as their cognitive reality kicks in and they become in touch with things around them, the only thing they saw for 8 years was a black president.
It's going to take a long time to get that first impression out of there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's good for them.
That was good, yeah.
Real
so
good.
They saw that and they went, oh, man, okay. I really can do this. And that's the beauty of that. But I wanted to share that with you. And if you want to dispute that, you can call up. That number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. But I found that to just be so awesome to see that statistic, and that's pretty cool. Okay, I'm gonna try to go through here and highlight some of the significant events of Black history, and we have Curtis on line one. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Rudy Howard. How you doing?
Good.
Okay. I was listening to you talking about the influence of the president, which is definite. I mean, I understand that. But, in this community I live, I've got Rudy Howards. Okay? And I've got people like Cliff and I've got my own household that I'm getting my kids to pattern themselves after by me stepping up. Not having to reach for Beyonce or somebody of that nature, although that's the kids' idols and all. But, in this house, we're going to achieve, and I'm going to be the example, and we're going to prosper in that manner. Rudy, I tell you, and I think on your show before, I said that if Northwest Fort Pierce looks the same way in 150 years that it looked now, I'll roll over in my grave.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for it to stay the way that it is, but I imagine it will.
Well, listen, let me tell you this. There's hope. Now, here's one of the things, and I live in Port St. Lucie, and I've said this so many times about Fort Pierce. With that natural waterfront, there is no reason why Fort Pierce should not be one of the premier cities on the East Coast. I watched them take Baltimore, which was in 20 times worse shape than Fort Pierce, and they built that inner harbor, and they made it a spot for people to come to from all over the country. And I saw them do it from scratch, and it was old beat-up warehouses down there, was falling apart, and they took that and they made it into something pretty. And we already have in Fort Pierce a beautiful waterfront, waterline property. It'll take somebody, I don't know who it's going to be, with some determination to apply some innovation to make that be all that it could be. So
yeah, I understand. I'm one of the ones that's out there on the front line. Jay is out there.
Yeah, he is.
At the NAACP meeting the other night, we had 7 people in there. It's almost a defeatist attitude, and the kids are more educated for sure, Rudy.
Yeah.
Everybody goes to college, man.
Yeah.
But we're not getting the bang for the buck, and I can't understand that. I really, really, really. And somebody, going to have to, outside of my family now, because I'm telling you, I tell stories from a long, long time ago, Rudy, and how they relate to where we are now as a people.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my grandkids the stories about my father having a bank account back when he was 22 years old, and just coming out of that period of time where the average person didn't have anything. And I let them know that they're born with these skills, man.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they're 12th grade or 10th grade or 8th grade.
Right.
I expect them to accomplish things that mankind can accomplish. My father used to say, as smart as you are, you don't have any gumption. You got to have gumption. You got to have a get up and go.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
And Rudy, I'm going to keep trying. I'm not giving up on anything because it's not in my nature, but I don't know. It's starting to get confusing to me.
No. We just listen. You want to take a great example. Reverend Barber in North Carolina started that Moral Monday movement 11 years ago. Okay? And he's one of the guys in today's time that I really look up to. And he kept doing it, and he kept doing it, and he started out with black folks and people who saw his commitment. It got wider and wider and wider, and now it's a complete mix of folks who have accepted his message.
Right.
But it took him 11 years. And what did he do? He got rid of that governor.
Right.
Those people got rid of that governor, and they got a new person in Congress. They didn't get rid of the senator, but they did it. But it was just a continuous, hard-fought effort that just never died.
Right.
But anyway, thank you, Curtis, so much for calling.
Can I get one more thing in, Rudy?
Sure.
I had forgot about it. But the Jewish thing and the black thing, the comparison, to the Jew, Jewish is a religion. To to the black, we have multiple religions.
Yeah.
And the thing about the Jew can mix in anywhere and do anything, and they do. They don't segregate like that. At least not down here in the South. Now, where you come from in New Jersey or New York, they might have had their communities. I don't know.
They did.
But, I'm a person of integration. I will push that over education and over everything else if they ask me to just define one thing that we need to do, and that would be that. We need to integrate every one of these communities, every workplace, every school, and everything else the way it should be. And that will, in the next 100 years, we will have accomplished the things that we need. But when you're looked at as being the other or the different one, a German Shepherd and a bulldog, they're going to fight, man. But when they get to know each other, they're living in the same house or the same neighborhood, they walk together with their chest out.
Yeah.
So at some point, we've got to do that.
Well, okay, my friend, I agree with
All
you.
right. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, all righty. Yeah, there's some wisdom in that for sure. Let me try to run through some of this because this is next week I'm getting back to normal. I kind of slipped out of it a little bit today. But the first Africans came here in 1619. Now there's some argument that says that we may have been here before that. In 1793, Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, making it a federal crime to assist a slave in trying to escape. That's interesting. Here's one of the big ones, and many of you probably heard of this and didn't know what it was. But in 1857, in the Dred Scott versus Sanford, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that blacks are not citizens of the United States and that Congress cannot prohibit slavery. How about that?
Somehow that little plan failed.
Yeah, right, yes. But that was the Supreme Court in 1857. In 1863, President Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation declaring all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then henceforth and forever free. How about that? So in 1863...
And Trump thinks he's having trouble right now.
Yeah, wow. Can you imagine how tough that was in 1863 to make that happen? That has to be unbelievable. In 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed that ratified prohibiting slavery. In 1868, the 14th Amendment is ratified, allowing blacks to become citizens. Then in 1870, the 15th Amendment is ratified, guaranteeing that right to vote cannot be denied because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. When you think about that, that's all the way back to 1865, and we're at 2017, and we still having a debate about votes. That makes me sick to my stomach that we're even having that debate. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but that's a whole nother show. In 1896, the U.S. Supreme Court rules in Plessy versus Ferguson that segregation does not violate the 14th Amendment, equal protection clauses, as long as conditions provided are separate but equal. That was one of the great setbacks. And here's an important thing. In 1926, Carter G. Woodson establishes the Negro History Week. And that was the birth of Black History Month, started by Carter G. Woodson. And I'm going to tell you there's one other thing here. I only have time for one more thing because we got to leave a little early for the IRSC game. In 1955, an all-white jury acquits 2 white men who confessed to murdering a 14-year-old black boy, Emmett Till, for allegedly whistling at a white woman. And that pretty much was the start of the civil rights movement, the death of Emmett Till. Well, folks, I hope that I have provided you with some very valuable information, and you should be able to talk to your black friends in a more educated way. And I'd like to thank you so much for listening to the African American Scene. God bless and be safe, and I'll see you next Wednesday right here.
IRC basketball is coming up. That means I'm going to be here in time enough to probably go ahead and edit and get this show that you just heard up on WPSLTV.com on YouTube. Look for WPSL TV there in the African American Scene with Rudy Howard. Stay tuned for IRSC basketball.